Joining us for insight on China's export slowdown and more is political analyst Rod Martin, also the founder and CEO of Martin Capital. Rod, good morning. In a recent piece at rodmartin.org, you say Mexico is capturing an outsized share of the supply chains and jobs that are leaving China, and that this is all ultimately good for America. So how fast is this shift happening? What are you seeing in the data?
Well, it really is good in general. And the truth is, it is Ross Perot's giant sucking sound, but this time coming from China instead of from the United States. Mexico is right on our border. It's integrated with our transport networks. It is significantly better off in countless ways than it was before the NAFTA deal, which really did cause a lot of job destruction in the United States. But we're starting to finally see the real benefit of it. Mexican wages are up 300% over that time, which means that they are much more competitive. There's a lot less incentive for Mexicans to become illegal immigrants in the United States. In fact, Mexico is beginning to have its own illegal immigrant problem. And so as that economic growth continues, there's more and more benefit to having factories in Mexico. Meanwhile, in China, you've seen wage growth not of 300%, but of 1,000%. In some parts of the country, even 1,500%, which is just remarkable. But it means that China can't be the world's low-cost leader on wages anymore. So a lot of economic activity is moving out of China as we speak to places like Vietnam and India. But the best place for most of those things to go is not in South Asia or Southeast Asia. It's actually Mexico, because it puts you within the USMCA trade bloc and it gives you direct access to the world's largest consumer market, which is and will remain the United States.
Yeah, so there's a lot at play here with the geographic side of things. Let's look at the demographics. China's demographic collapse as a structural reason. It's, as you say, getting old before it gets rich. Meanwhile, if we look at Mexico's demographics, they're far more stable, closer to America's demographics. How might that position Mexico well?
Well, you're exactly right. And you used a key phrase from development economics. You know, this idea that countries succeed in the long run if they can get rich before they get old. And of course, that's Japan, that's South Korea, that's Taiwan, Singapore. These are all countries that managed to make it into first world status before they had too many old people to be able to support with the working class that was available. China is having the exact opposite situation. They are getting old before they get rich. And it's a self-inflicted wound. It's the direct result of the one-child policy, which fortunately has ended, but the cultural effects and demographic effects have not. China has a ballooning elderly population being supported by an ever-shrinking number of young people who are working. And it gets even worse than that, because most of those people have invested most of the money that they would have available to help support their parents in retirement. Their parents have also put their retirement savings into real estate in China, which is depreciating fast as the population begins to shrink. So you've got about a 10-year period left where China looks kind of okay. But beyond that, the abyss. It's absolutely a nightmare, and there's nothing the Chinese government can do to reverse it. By contrast, like you say, Mexico's total fertility rate is roughly identical to the United States, but even more important than that, because neither country is quite at replacement rate, but they're much, much higher. They're actually double the rate of China. Nevertheless, what both countries share is the ability to attract large-scale immigration when they need it. And right now they don't need it, but they have it. In the long run, they're going to need it more, but they're going to be able to get it. And there's just nowhere for it to come from in China. Plus, China just doesn't assimilate immigrants well.
All right. How do you see this continental realignment playing into perhaps a stronger America this century, built on commerce, geography, and leverage, rather than the old globalization model that subsidized a rival, essentially?
Well, it really is different than it was in the 90s. In the 90s, we lost a lot of industry directly out of Pennsylvania, directly out of Michigan, directly out of the United States generally into Mexico because the wage gap was just so much. With a lower wage gap between the two countries, there's a lot of incentive for Mexicans to stay in Mexico and fill those jobs. There's a lot less incentive to move high-end jobs out of the United States. And Donald Trump's tariff policy is actually encouraging reindustrialization in the United States. Now, that's higher end stuff. That's semiconductor fabs. That's a lot of things that aren't going to naturally fit in Mexico for a variety of reasons. But that actually works out to the best. As the United States becomes an even more dominant global economic power, we are able to conduct a division of labor in which the really high-end stuff increasingly comes back to America. We become that level of industrial powerhouse. Meanwhile, Mexico picks up the slack on the lower and mid-level stuff that also has to be done, and they get rich in the process. Over several decades, you're going to see both countries get much richer together.
Rod Martin, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.